green tea. It's very healthy for you. It helps you focus the mind. Today we'll talk about architecture. Modern architecture has a lot of problems, and if you want to solve them, I'm the kind of guy you're looking for. Woo! Woo! When I start to think that less than 100 years ago they could create extraordinary beauty. Extraordinary beauty and glory that was reflected not only in architecture, but in music, literature, clothing. It seems that things went extremely wrong. Something went extremely wrong. And there are two ways we can look at this problem. First, we can study it systematically, sociologically. We can check how things developed and try to understand the causalities. Or we can just admire what our ancestors created. And we can learn simply from this observation how we failed. And the saddest thing is that there are people who can and are willing to revoke the glory of the past. Not only to revoke it, but to enhance it further. But they don't have the opportunity. And that's really interesting. That's really interesting to me. How we live in the empire of lies. And how people who really want to make a change never get the opportunity. Because it is obvious that a lot of people can see how our society deteriorated. And if we take a look at architecture specifically, it's impossible to be blind when you're walking down the streets of New York or Chicago. That there are sublime creations around you. And it's unimaginable to me how they could create it. And the reason is not from the manufacturing point of view, but from the viewpoint of society that allowed those individuals to embrace their full potential. Because there have to be right circumstances. There have to be actually very special circumstances for Chrysler buildings, for Empire State buildings, for all those beautiful skyscrapers. And why I'm so fixated on this area, of course we talk about Art Deco, is because it seems that it really is the last period of mankind where people strive for perfection as far as aesthetics is concerned. Of course we have even more glamorous examples in history. Everyone talks about Gothic cathedrals. Oh my god, and their mesmerizing effect. Of course, Gothic cathedrals surpassed Art Deco in terms of attention to detail and construction difficulty, especially if we imagine that they were created hundreds of years ago, and how entire community supported that vision of creating the best we can. And I'm not saying that we are not doing this at all. We still have modern examples of cathedrals, like Accelerator in CERN. That would be a kind of representation, how society can be focused in a single point. But besides that, I think all our goals are more or less futile. They don't have the right desires. They don't have the right aim. And we have to change that. I talked before about how people are not blind. I'm so happy when occasionally someone exposes the beauty of Art Deco. A great example is Sam Hyde.
There's no slider in the program where you can crank up the number of Indians to 200 million and bring the American dream to fruition faster, okay? There's no data entry point where you can bump up the Indians and get Chrysler buildings popping up everywhere, more Art Deco construction.
People like Sam Hyde they're really our hope for the future. Those are the people who understand humor and who understand that the life is to be enjoyed. And only such people can create right circumstances for beauty and glory. Not some stiff, sclerotic cripples, some bankers, some CEOs. They will never create that. Because they're not interested in those subtle aspects of human creation. They cannot register the heights of Art Deco, for example, let alone Gothic cathedrals. So I was trying to make some tutorials about architecture, how I do my designs, because I'm confident that some of them are worth presenting to the world. And I tried to explain my process, but I realized it's extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult to convey how I think inside my mind, what kind of decisions I make, because oftentimes I need weeks, I need months to make a quite banal decision when it comes to, I don't know, staircases, how they are turned, the dimension of staircases, the proportion of staircases in relation to the entire composition. Are they comfortable enough? Is there enough space? Those kind of things which nobody notices when design is finished, but the quality architecture has to think about that. If you ever have a chance to go to Paris, I highly recommend climbing Eiffel Tower by staircases, by steps. You can get to the first floor just walking, and you will see how well made are those stairs. They're a complete joy for walking. Yeah, those are the details you have to think about if you're making quality architecture. And when it comes to design, it's even more difficult. Because you have to think about all the proportions, all the effect the architecture has, how it will fit inside the module you decided, and should you change that module, entire composition changes. And the module, I think, is the most important thing because it holds up the integrity, it holds up entire structure, it holds the logic of the building. So if someone was to check your plans, check your designs, they should be able to conclude everything from the module. Everything has to be logical, it has to be deductible, and Then you have the meaning of architecture. What kind of philosophical ideas are you communicating with the users, with the observers? What was your idea? And of course, it's very hard to comprehend all those elements together and keep them in harmony. That's why a quality design for a mansion takes me around 3 to 5 years until I'm completely satisfied. And of course, we are talking about exterior and interior and entire interior design, chairs, wardrobes, bathroom, and so on. This will take 3 or 5 years. If we are talking only about exterior and rough interior without the furniture, I think I can do it in a year. Of course, we are talking about the design of the garden and entire urbanism and so on. 1 year is enough to do something very quality. And someone has to sponsor that. And usually you can do such projects only for yourself, because nobody is willing to sponsor that. People think that you can do this in 2 weeks or in a month. And we live in a society where there is no right sponsors. A lot of people are satisfied with average or beneath average results. That's why we have IKEA. That's why we have prefabricated houses. That's why we have ugly shopping centers, things like that. And I won't go into the big projects like skyscrapers from famous architecture bureaus like Herzog Demeron. I hate those guys. A lot of huge architectural bureaus are a scam. They're a fraud. And they're selling you fog. And people are naive. They want to be cool. You have 2 rich people completely blind for beauty. But because their house or their office was created by this or that famous architectural bureau that uses rust for facade, they think they're cool and that they're sophisticated. And they use organic forms and think that this is modern and so on. But it lacks all emotion. It lacks the feeling when you enter those spaces that you are an extraordinary human being. I don't feel like that in those spaces. In fact, those spaces want me to die. They want me to leave architectural field for good and dedicate myself to something else. And I did that a few times in my life. I tried to abandon architecture because I realized it's hopeless. I realized it's hopeless, that it's too difficult to deal with those people, and that it would be better to dedicate myself to philosophy and spiritual practice. But every time I do this, I feel a sort of responsibility, because I know that I was gifted with design, I was gifted with imagination, and I feel guilty for not giving the world my gift. Because in my eyes, I know that nobody else can create designs that I would like to have. And I don't want anyone else to get involved in that. Because I know that I'm someone who is willing to work all day and all night to produce the best possible thing. But I need the right circumstances. So, Sam Hyde, I know that you admire Art Deco, and I know that you strive for that. You want that to happen again. And we can create it. We can create it even more beautifully. I think it could be developed. It could be developed further to sublime beauty. Especially with modern technology, where we are not so dependent on... You know what's really interesting? That you have all these modern technologies and we use them for the worst kind of purpose. One was to think that, okay, now that we have modern technology, we can create things from stone, for example, much easier. But no, we just stopped doing things from stone, and instead we do things from plastics, we do things from cardboard. Ridiculous. The green tea. The problem of drinking tea is that when the liquid in the glass drops, it cools faster. And this forces you to drink it faster. And tea is something where you should not rush. Tea should remind us that we can take our lives a little bit slower. I think that's one of the best benefits of tea. That it reminds us that we can take our lives slower. You should never drink tea impulsively like you do when you're working and you're just sucking down that glass or that cup of tea. No, when you're drinking tea, you should enjoy the moment. And it helps me relax with this video as well, because I'm trying to make it in one take, without script and without preparation, without too much of preparation. Because I believe that only this way I can achieve a spontaneous atmosphere, a relaxed spontaneous atmosphere, which again I admire in Sam Hyde.
Yo, you good? Yo!
I don't know if there's any other man that is so spontaneous and so carefree, so aloof. I love Sam Hyde in these aspects. Even though I think he could improve his style of clothing and his hygiene. I think he got loose too much in those aspects. But that's Sam Hyde, you know, that's Sam Hyde. But to be a true aristocrat, you should never forget about that.